Okay, so we're going to start with a medium gray. And if you don't have any medium gray, you could always use a little bit of licorice and white and create a gray. Okay, which I might end up doing because I'm getting a little low. I'll have to go and look through some of my colors and see if I have more. And mostly white. And also a sponge. Okay. So in this one I'm going to actually use Donna's smaller one with the point on it. Okay, and I'm going to dampen that into my water. I'm going to double load my sponge. And right now, I just want it to be like a dirty kind of white. I'm going to move that over so that I'm not picking up any more gray. And I'm just sliding my side of the... Okay, so I've picked up quite a bit of white and just enough to dirty my sponge. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of go back and forth, up and down, to create a little bit of a wash. Okay, so it's pretty quick and easy. Okay. You want to have just that little bit of movement and streaky movement, and kind of come down. If you don't have enough water in your sponge, you won't be able to get it gliding. Okay. And you just want to feather it off into the bottom. You don't really want it to. Okay, and then what I would do is just turn it upside down so that you can pull towards you. And get those streaks moved down just a little bit lower. And I didn't gesso this one, because I do like sometimes seeing a little bit of a texture. Okay, so now I'm going to reload my sponge. And if you needed more paint, go ahead and add more paint and play with your background until you're happy with it. But I got a really good load that time. You see my gray is old. I got some dry crunchies there. So the first thing I want to do is create a border. And you can use you can see where the frame is. Okay, so just go up a little bit higher. And just make yourself a stripe. And I like that it's getting light at the top of the, I'm just going to try to go as straight as possible. Okay, so I'm using my sponge sideways so that I'm using the white at the top. And we can always add a little bit more streakiness and neaten this up a little bit with our brush later. Okay, so I'm just getting that main. And to control how much water I have in my sponge, sometimes I do like to use a little bit of floating medium. And I just added a little bit more floating medium into that gray side. As you can see that I'm not really using a lot of gray right now. Okay. So you can put your canvas sideways now, and you're going to do the same all the way down. And you can overlap. I might have to try and get more gray on my plate. Okay. And then you can even go off into an angle. See how I just kind of really got to that peak? I went into the angle. Okay, so we can fix that a little bit more with our brush later. Okay. Get some more gray out of here. reload my sponge. So whatever is comfortable for you. If you were left-handed, and you probably would have started the other way around. But you can, I'm just adding some gray there, and then I'm putting pressure there so I can get that corner look. And then make your line. Need a little floating medium in there. So when we do the second line, then it'll definitely get straightened out for you. So again, I'm going to push up and then over. Need a bit more weight. And whatever the width is of the sponge, right? You're just kind of using. And just keep working it over. And if you feel like you went over a little too much, that's okay. Just go with it. And then if you need to fix anything, you just go over it again. Right? And here I want to do my angle again, but I don't have enough dark behind it. Okay, so make sure that you have some dark behind it. You should see just your dark all around the edges. Up a little bit. And just keep turning it around. And playing with it until you got it looking the way you want it. And then what I'm going to do is try to pick up whatever dark gray I have left, and I'm going to go all around the edges and try to make that the very darkest. Okay, and that's going to really help to add to that illusion of depth. So only medium gray here, and then it's going to fade up over the top of your canvas. That's why I like working with wrapped canvases sometimes when I want to add to that effect. So all the way around the edges. And if you wanted to even add a touch of black, since I'm running out of the gray, what I want to do is I'm just going to pre-mix some gray. Over to the side so it's not black. You can use the tip of your brush too to pick up some white. Use that to stir if you want. And this is definitely a little darker than what came out of my bottle, which is nice for around the edges. And then whatever's left on my brush, I'm just going to actually wipe it onto my sponge. Okay. And then I'm going to pick up whatever white I have over here just to start blending a little softer edge to my white, so that if I want to blend over my sides, I still have that little bit of a gray tone. Yeah, that gives it a lot nicer depth. And definitely some more floating medium. to blend and soften. So you don't want to go over your edge too much with that dark. So keep that blended. So I keep that side clean so that I can intensify anything going over it the second time. Fix my line. Now let's add some dark in there to fix things. Go over the sides. I'm doing it the first time just lightly. Definitely gives us our markers that we can play around and tweak. And make it a little bit more intense. Bring some of that white. So just put a little bit of pressure on there, because sometimes you just need harder as opposed to putting too much paint. Really work it into that canvas. And then once you got that first layer of paint on there, then it's usually a lot easier to paint on. Bring all this up just a slight bit higher. This one I kind of made light on both sides. This one I got a little bit of a softening effect there. Let's do this corner. Once you got it all nice and neat, then you can always just put a few streaks in there with your brush or your going over that very lightly, just enough to say I'm adding a little bit more interest just around the edges, just to distress it a little bit. Just here and there. Okay, so now I want to use my brush and pick up some more fresh white, dampen my brush, and I'm going to go in and steal some of this and double load it. Pick up lots of floating medium. And then here I'm going to do my other layer with a smaller brush. Okay, and do the same thing, but you're going to have your darker at the bottom. The other way. Always add just a little bit of white if you do a little oopsie like I did. Clean things up. And you might got a little bit of streaky look there. So you don't have to kill yourself if it's not perfect. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. All the way. Definitely want lots of floating medium. You want like a translucent color, but also just for that glide. Okay. You can always make things lighter and darker with another coat. It's too translucent, but just getting that shading started. And you can always just go behind it. Picked up some fresh white. Okay. Neaten that line up a little bit. You can see how I play with my brush. I use the tip of it sometimes. Hopefully I have enough of this dark to go all the way around, otherwise I have to make a little bit more. But like I said, a lot more translucent color. And this is what happens when you have too much floating medium. Okay, so you don't want it too wet. Okay, so I just help that along, drag that over. Put it over here, and then it'll help slide your stroke. Right. On an angle. Wipe out. Like. Almost looks like a barn board kind of coloring. But sometimes I just worry about the dark, especially when I'm doing something like this. I was just kind of worrying about the dark. That edge being really neat. And then now I'm going to pick up the white. You want that a little bit more intense than the washi. And then you can make that straight. Basically the thickness of your 3/4 brush. A little bit on an angle. And a little bit on an angle this way. Smooth it out while it's still wet. And I'm just going to neaten this line up here a little bit. Loading medium. And my corners lined up. Wake this guy up here, it's starting to dry. See how little you need of that dark. Into white, I have to go blend in some more gray. Yeah. Okay, let's get better. And then that one. As you go around, you'll see if you need a little bit more color. You need to go over it again. So you can neaten anything up. No problem. Play with your dark, let it dry a little bit. And you can always add to it a little bit more. Either your dark line is not needed enough, then you can just go in with a smaller brush and neaten anything you want up. Okay, so now we're going to clean our brush really good because we don't want any white in there. And I want lots of that floating medium. And I want a lot of that, whatever I have dark left here. Okay, so I'm only loading that dark up on the one side of my brush. Go right into that where I can salvage. And what I want to do is just add a few little depth marks now. And then flick off. Going into the corner and then flick it off. Okay, so this part's still wet, so I can flick this off a little bit more too. And if you get any paint on your white, you can always just take a clean brush and erase it. So we're just kind of doing this in the corners. Okay, so lots and lots of floating medium. You don't want it to be too dark. And you're trying to give you guys a good angle, and I'm going crooked. So you see that even not just that little bit of a highlight in the corners. Take it off. Wasn't my clean brush. It's very easy to erase it if you are quick while it's still kind of wet. A little bit of shading exercise for you here. Like I said, you can always go in, brighten things up by themselves. Neaten up any little areas that make it look too draggy or a little bit messy. Brighten it up. You do, you just want it to be kind of irregular. And some of this won't even, you're going to overlap it a little bit with some greenery here and there, so try to remember the areas you don't like and then try to cover them with green. What I usually do. There, like that. Let's go in. Alrighty. So I decided to let this dry, and I was looking at it, and I was seeing how crooked things were, and kind of hard for you to see the very bottom, but it's not measured properly. Let me show you sideways. So freehanding it is not a big deal, because maybe you're looking at a picture on an angle, and you know, things are not always going to be proportioned if you're not dead on square, right? By the time we put our wreath on here and the bunny and his little friend, you know, the focal point is going to be that. Okay, so if you want to be more precise about it, you know, I'm going to pick my favorite widths that's going on right now around the sides. You can definitely make the bottom and the top a little bit wider than you do the sides. It's up to you, because the length of the canvas is quite long as opposed to wide. So, you know, you can play around with it. I'm just saying if you want to get particular. You know, I've just picked up one of my rulers that I had quick as only a centimeter ruler here. So you can see it as 3 centimeters for the first one, and about 2 centimeters for the second one. Or you can just use the actual width of your ruler as a guide. That's probably a good inch, right? Or a little bit more than an inch, right? So you definitely want to make your outside panel the biggest, and then make the inside one a little bit smaller. But yeah, I'm still happy with dimensions, and like I said, the shadows on the inside, just kind of make them subtle, you know, just enough to pop another layer in there, so it looks like there's 3 layers coming down into the top of the door. And so if you wanted to make this more brown, like if you have more brown tones in your home and you want to make it look more like real wood, then definitely you could do this with a camo and burnt umber or real brown, and some white to lighten things up, and do the same technique with a brown tone or blue tones, or you know, it really depends on what you want to do with your background. This can make a great background for any kind of wreath or for any season. Okay, I've got my design all sketched out, and hopefully you guys can see some just rough arrows. Okay, I'm not going very long into things, so you know, we can definitely make our veins of our different types of styles of leaves and foliage a lot longer into, you know, certain areas, but then you have to erase more. So at least if I have some, you know, little short arrows around my circle, so I did a bit of erasing so you can see that some of my circle kind of disappeared, but definitely you can get the general idea of placement, and then if, you know, you come down a little bit longer, you know, into, you know, certain areas, that's okay. Don't just follow the actual arrows at this point. Just know that, you know, we're going to play with that a little bit and tweak things. And then when I'm completely done the design today, then I will do the main pattern from there. Okay, so we definitely want to kind of make a little bit of a circle, like there's you know, he's sitting a little bit onto the edge of the middle of the brim. So this outer circle that you have created here is the biggest that you want to make it. You don't want to go any wider than that. Okay, so this is your inner part of the circle of your wreath, and we can definitely make this a little tiny bit darker too if you want to make this a little bit wider. Okay. I'll have a picture for you guys up to this point. Okay. So hopefully you can get an idea of what I was talking about here. I'll just erase this one now. Get it out of the way. You can print this page off and use this as a template to get your basic shape going. You don't have to get into the detail like I did as much if you don't want to. But once you start painting, just, leaving the placement for these eyes and the nose, and, so that you're able to color them in. And, yeah, my little baby bunny and my little baby chickie, make them look cute. And, again, you guys could always paint these things on anything. Like I said, if you're using fabric paint, you can paint on the reusable shopping bags or t-shirts or anything for the kids, for grandchildren, whatever you're painting for. Then I was just trying to line it up so that my bunny was sitting slightly just on the edge of my circle. So I don't know if you guys can see that circle, just the lighting is off, that's all. And then what I did is I just kind of roughed in another circle. Okay, so we're going to pounce this anyways. So it can be a little bit random, and it doesn't have to be totally perfect. But you don't want to get any wider than this first circle that you drew with the plate. Okay? And then you figure out where's your bunny going to sit. Okay, so this bunny actually sits a lot better on the bigger one. You're just going to line it up and use your graphite paper, okay, to go over it. And you don't even need to put in his eye detail. Just put the outside of his eye. Okay, I didn't spend a lot of time with the eyes on the drawing just because I knew that I was going to spend it on the painting part detail. Okay, so when you're doing your tracing, you don't even have to worry too much about your centers of the eyes if you don't want to. I stuck them in there for you too, but basically knowing where your eyebrows are important, and the shape of the beak, and where his cheeks are, his smile, and so you can trace that out. And then you'll see in the process of the videos how I start to do the pouncing on the outside, and I start putting in all my leaves, and I slowly work myself into painting the our little friends. Just to show you again the PDF. If you guys have any problems at all, just please contact me. Did anybody do the teddy bear with me?
Yes.
Right? So you know how I did the shading around the outside of the teddy bear to get it going?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, very, very similar to this as well.
Okay.
So it's basically the same way I did the bunny, as I started putting the camel in, staying away from my lines so that I can see where to do that shading. Okay.
Okay.
With the eyes, like I said, I did try to, give you these two pictures kind of separate things, how I started them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see in the finishing touch video number 4 where I finished the details and adding just a little bit of pink into the nose, and like I ended up tweaking his nose a little bit, because it was the first original. So I'm making it up as I go, and I'm thinking, I kind of think I need to brighten up that nose a little bit. So I decided last minute to make a little bit pink on there. So and adding more pink into the shading after. You'll see how I glazed that pink over. And so it's all done in steps.
Okay.
Right? So I did just the brown and the camel first, and then I glazed that little bit of pink over it after, like a blush, almost like makeup.
Yeah.
So that you still see the beige underneath the tone of the pink. But yeah, I go through it. Like I said, it's a 6-hour video. It's very thorough, and I just knew that there was no way that I could get that much detail done in 3 hours tonight. I would have been pushing you guys way too much, and I would have been pushing myself out way too much, and then it just wouldn't have come out as neat. And I just, if I feel like I'm not going to give you guys a good end result, I don't want to do it. So when I realized that this video was 6 hours, as I was at, no, there is no way I want to share this much detail with you in 3 hours. So, like I said, I hope that you guys are going to really like the process on pre-recorded. And it's this exact little guy that I'm doing for you. And the same thing with the little chickie, right? And then these are just little tiny daisy strokes I did for here. I put in a few, and then I finished all my other stuff, and then I went back in and I just added a few more.
How cute.
Okay, so I kind of started it and then took a break from it, and then I came back to them. So I did the flowers, and then I think I came back and finished all the details.
That lavender really makes it pop.
Then I decided just to keep this ribbon, the magenta, and then I made his ribbon blue. So I'm still tying in the two colors that I used, right?
Oh.
I used the magenta and that blue to create that mulberry. So when you mix that magenta and that blue into the same painting, they all kind of flow and tie together because those two colors created this one. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right, so they're all going to tie in together nicely and flow. So I would just want to thank everybody so much for joining me tonight and giving me input to help make these even better for you guys. And thank you for being a part of our little paint parties. And I can't wait to see your versions, and contact me if you have any problem at all, okay? And message me, send me pictures of your work on Messenger is the best thing to do. Okay, for the first leaf that we're going to put on, I'm giving you a little practice sheet. You guys can see them all separately. Okay, so just to kind of show you a quickie. I'm going to leave this one bare so you guys can practice on it. And for you lefties, there's one over here. So just to see that there is a branch off a branch to start with. Okay, and then some of them were a little fatter. Okay, you can, make them skinny or fat. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a couple of these fat ones here along with them, and just to show you the difference between the sizes. Okay, but if you want a real chisel-y kind of look, okay, like I said, watch your gradient. Make sure that you have lots of that green in your brush. Okay, and then make little tiny chisels and practice them even smaller. That's your first leaf. Okay, so now that we're a little bit comfortable with a size 12 and trying to do small little chisels, so now we're going to pull out our big 3/4 and practice a small little chisel with a big brush. Okay. So they're basically the same thing. Okay. You're going to start off at the top and just give yourself a tiny little stem to start. And you can have maybe one off to the side. Okay. And you're just going to push down. Okay. And then you're going to try and focus to get them as small as you can. And they're all going to come towards you. And you're going to brick layer them and slowly work your way down that stem. Start the other one. Do the same thing. You can even overlap. Okay. There you have that dark there. And it stands out nicely. Remember your paper, if you're practicing on paper, it's going to be a lot drier. Okay. I'm pushing a little bit harder so my strokes are a tiny little bit thicker than I can get them to glide on my, and you lefties. Even though I'm still doing it with my right hand, I still just want to give you a little bit of a glance at, the direction that's going to be most comfortable for you. Poundsies. Very soft touches. Ready? A couple more little examples of the second leaf. Okay, so the next leaf I kind of just decided to do a little differently. And it's really going to push your right and left-handed strokes, guys. Okay? So that one I did upside down so that I could see the highlight on the top. Okay, and then just keep sliding down to give yourself a vein. Okay, so just keep playing with all your daisy strokes in different directions and how you push on them, and you'll see that it gives you different effects. Okay, so if you wanted a little bit more of a straight on up and down kind of look, you're going to go right straight up and down and push down. But that gives you a little streakiness, right? But it doesn't give you much width, right? So this is where I wanted you to kind of go a little bit sideways, push, and then bring it in. I'm making that one a little bit further apart, which you can do. Like I said, sometimes it's always easier to go and finish. So you want them to have a little bit of a skiddiness there. And some I did 3, some I did 4. Okay. And then move yourself upside down so that you're able to go up, right up on your chisel and push towards it, and then right into your original. And so we're trying to get them in a smaller space, so I did layer them a little bit more. Okay. Just so you guys can see the actual strokes. And if you want to make them a little bit more spread out, you can too. Okay. Again, having your highlight on the top. Okay. That direction. All the way down. If you don't have enough slip on the paper, it's just because you have to add a little bit more floating medium. Again, and this angle seems to be easier for me to come forward. Here. It's always going to be an easier and harder side. Layer on top of each other a little bit more. Here. And you layer into this one a little bit, but you just want to make sure that they are joining like little V's. Remember where you're going to stop. Bring that in. Push. Pull in. They're almost like S strokes. Right, but I'm still wanting to do a daisy stroke, but it's still very similar. Okay. A bit more pointy. That's our third leaf. Got a little part of Miss Molly in this one. There's a smart ass there and jumped on the table after coming in from outside. Little brat. So, this is the fourth leaf. So we did that with the real brown and thicket. And you can choose to do with the green on the top. Or you can do it with the brown on the top. You're going to get a little different look. But you're basically staggering them. Into each other. And that one's actually a little bit too close to each other. You want them to kind of come down. That was a little bit fat. Stagger down. Again, I'm going to put an X on that one. So definitely needs some floating medium. On the paper compared to the canvas. Sometimes just adding more paint will help too. It's really good and loaded. And you really want to make them big. So this is where you kind of made it so fat down there. Up. So basically they're straight up and down. Okay. And then, but if you do go slightly on the side, then you get a little bit bigger stroke. And a little bit more at an angle. Green. Straight up and down. down, a little bit lower. Okay, so I was trying to do a bit of a curl there. But in a while, it doesn't hurt. Green is looking mostly brown, right in the floating medium. So much light in here. Dry spot. A little halfway down compared to this guy, so that they brick. See, this one is not a very good one here. This is the one that you want to do. But you know, like I said, a few of those, and then if you don't like it, you can always put a flower on there or layer another leaf over this one. Right? So don't stress too much. And I'm just going to leave that there in the practice sheet for you there with Molly's footprint. Okay, I guess I double clicked on my record button and I didn't get to record this for you, but I basically did an oops and I was almost doing that same stroke we were doing earlier, so I put an X through there just to let you know. And I'm going to show you, but I'm also want to show you something else while I have the opportunity, is if you have wax paper and if you haven't taken any of my courses before, what I suggest that you do is you put some wax paper or clear plastic sheet, if you have some protector sheets. You know, sometimes we put our practice sheets after we print them, we can put them in there and you can practice right on that. Or you can practice on wax paper, kitchen stuff, you know, baking paper, parchment paper, wherever in the world you are, they have different names for it. Okay, so you can use this as a guide, right? So I'm going to label them. I use a size 12 for the stroke, right? And you can see my little strokes there to guide you a little bit too for the practice. Okay, so that you're going to just push down and pop up, slide a little bit, a little tiny bit of a point, but you're taking advantage of the thickness of your brush it can possibly do. If it doesn't spread out fat enough for you, it doesn't have enough floating medium or it doesn't have enough paint. If it's feeling a little bit sticky, 9 times out of 10 I'll try more paint first. Because if my paint isn't a good consistency, it's more likely that I need more paint. Okay? So you just press down, and you can see that more paint was the answer. Okay? If you're still getting dragginess, then maybe a tiny bit. If it's really warm climate, really dry in your house, your paint's drying fast on you. But you really don't want that point, okay? You want a little bit more of a softer bump. Okay, so you're starting a little bit on the side here, but you're pushing down so that you can get that little bit of a bump. And push down and pull in. You want your highlights to be on the inside in that stroke. Then you're just going to do the same thing, but just try not to do such a point. Push down and pull in. Okay. Me going slow, I'm putting some points on them. But basically they're down. Turn your brush around. Move your wax paper over. You can go over the same stroke, whatever one you're working on, 3, 4, 5 times. You know, moving it until you get it. So hopefully I'm going a little slower. I'm Got a lot of extra practice in here for you guys this time. Okay. But I still highly suggest to jump on my intro programs. 1 to 5 gives you lots of practice on whatever particular stroke you're having a hard time with. Sometimes it's easier to do those sideways ones than it is up and down. If you see, you just turn your brush around and you get different looks depending on where you're. Okay, and then practice both directions. As soon as you push it, put your chisel down, you're pushing right away. Get a little bit chubbier look. But you want to be able to come right back up again really quickly so that you're getting a chubby look. So it's almost like your comma stroke. Okay. We learned that in the first one. Really fat one. So there you go, a little extra practice there, and I put some which direction my brush is, okay, where it is when I go to start the stroke. And it's a little different than this one. This one's more of a slider stroke and not so chubby. A little bit pointy at the top, then you're starting to press and come up. So this one you're pressing right away and popping up. Okay, so that's the difference between those two leaves. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is pounce our wreath in a little bit of background color to get some quick color back in there quick. Okay, so depending on what size of pouncers you have, scruffy pouncers, okay, the only ones that come that are medium size that I know of are in the Pro set. Okay, so these are the 1/2 inch pouncers. And then also I have one that's a 1/2 inch in the fabric set, and it's a little bit softer. Okay, so if you have the fabric set of brushes around, remember there's a pouncer in there too. And then the little ones that are from, this is from the Pro set, and this is from the Value set. So the Pro set is just a little bit bigger than the other ones. So if you just really spread it out, okay, and get them fanned out. But I don't suggest the small ones unless you really want to get into some certain details of areas that are really small, and you don't, you can do it that way too. But I'm going to be using just the 3/4 ones out of the standard set, the basic complete set. Okay, and what I'm going to do to kind of cheat my way in is what we're going to start with a flat brush. And we're going to add a little bit of sap green. Okay. And what I want you to do is you can just load 1/2 a brush if you want. And if you're not comfortable with loading 1/2 a brush, this is a good time to practice it a little bit. And it's not going to be that important. But, what I want you to do is kind of reverse line in some space here behind the ears, especially in these smaller areas. And if it's not sliding good for you, add a little bit of floating medium. Okay. And you just want it rough, kind of, slip slop it in. But you do want around the edges kind of clean. Okay. And why I say to side load your brush, it's just so it feathers it in, so it's not so like a solid line all the way around your guy. And you can always go over this a little bit when we do our bunny. But we want to get the background done of the wreath. Okay, so this will help add some shading and some depth into those places, right? Make our bunny pop out. Okay, and, you know, if it's really watered down, you know, you can cover the whole thing if you want. You'll see that because I did a lot of penciling, it's actually adding color to my paint, but I'm gonna go right over that anyways. Okay, and then also, you know, behind them here. Okay, and that way, when you are pouncing, you don't have to worry about getting so close to your line. Okay. Under his ear. Remember where the line is here, so you can pounce and add more a little bit later. And then this way you're still kind of seeing your arrows a little bit, which most of them will get covered right now, but you do have the printable, hopefully beside you or handy, that you can remind yourself if you do cover any of your arrows. Okay. Well, definitely at the bottom of our, so we can just put in some rough greenery there if you want. But we're going to go over that again anyways. Okay. So I'm just going to go really lightly around his tail area. And then under the bum. And whatever's left, you can just flip-flop around. A little bit of darkness there, but not too heavy that you're going to see those blobbies. Okay, and we're going to give a nice little branch for the chickadee to stand on. Okay, so you can put a little bit of color right behind it, even though it's outside our circle area. Because I do plan to kind of pounce a little bit in there. Okay. Just lightly behind his head. Kind of messy. Anyway, like I said, we're going to be pouncing. His bum. Like I said, I'm just putting in a rough placement. Okay. As you do kind of want it to look like it's like a round circle kind of. And we're going to focus on some of the lighter colors in the middle. So this just gives you a little bit of light guide. Like, it's very watered down, so it's, you know, you're going to be able to bounce over. You don't want it to be a perfect circle like this, okay? This is just guiding you. In your placement. Once you do start pouncing, you probably will lose some of that placement. This is just to keep you guided. Okay? And I'm trying to do it a little bit darker than you need to do it, just so that the camera picks it up really well for you. So it's basically our size. So I want to play around with a lot of different colors of brightness and depth and darkness. And if you have a variety of different greens I want to stay with the citrus green for this wreath. So then that way when we pick up our brighter lime greens and different other greens and we make some little bluey greens, then it's all going to stand out really nicely. So now I can pick up my big pouncer and double load it. You don't need it, and your pouncer should be dry, okay? If it's damp, it's going to be more watered down paint. So hopefully you're got a brand new scruffy that has been washed and dried. So I don't mean brand new as in brand new out of the package. I just mean brand new. So just go over to the side. You don't always want to stay in your puddle, so you got to try and find another area there to kind of just go off of it a little bit. So then you're not getting lots of gloopies on your brush. So what I'm going to do is just start tapping a little bit all around the edges. And I'm just kind of going a little bit up and down, and moving myself all the way around my circle now. And you can see that I'm slightly going over in some areas, and in some areas I'm trying to stay inside right on that line, just so that I'm giving it a little bit of interest. Okay, and then I'm going to just lightly pick up my edge so that I'm not using the whole brush, so that I'm not going to be pouncing too much on my bunny's tail. And so we're just kind of making this, and not too globby, right? Just enough that it's wet. And I'm going to be giving you good coverage. Okay. Just here and there. I'm going to work around the whole outside of our face. And once you got your brush really good and loaded, you see that I don't really have to play around too much on my plate, because we're doing so much pouncing with the same color that you can just actually pick up a little bit more fresh paint, give it one or two more dabs, and you can start blending the rest right into your canvas. Get the coverage. Turn your brush so that it's facing, just think about a clock, right? So make sure that you're facing to a clock, coming up into 1 o'clock. I'm dyslexic. I started backwards. Maybe like the lefties like me for that reason, but I don't know. I just kind of felt like that was a safe spot to start right underneath there. I hardly have anything on my brush, so I'm just trying to kind of blend that in. Okay. And then if it feels more comfortable, you can just go from right to left here. If you do go over your area a little bit, just take a clean brush and kind of smooth it out so that not a big deal. And then over here in the corner, you can go upside down. Okay, so we still keep that dark in there. And then lightly kind of pounce that little bit of darkness back in. Going to finish the top of our circle. Just so while we're there, you can get an idea of what we're going to do now next. Okay, so if you got too much of a pouncy area, just kind of soften it out a little bit so that it's not like you're seeing the actual roundness there. You seen how I just softened that out a little bit more? And then, you know, really try to get that light in there too. Alright, so obviously I'm going to need a little bit more sap. And then now we're going to do all around the outside, put that. And just go very, very lightly on the side of your brush. Just use just a tiny bit of that edge. Just kind of soften that in there. Like I said, not a big deal if you do. Just grab it right away. Don't let it dry. Okay, and now, again, in that smaller area, I just want to soften some of that lightness back down again because it's too light there. And you put just a trace, right? And then you can always just use the light side of your pencil just to kind of put a couple freckles in there. Okay, a little bit more on the side will give you a little bit more darkness with it. Okay, if you're right straight down or sideways or right on the edge of the dark only, you can control where you're going. And you're going to overlap a little bit now so you can add a little bit more highlights over your areas as well. A little bit more. Citrus. Oh, let's keep going. Yeah, I hit underneath his bunny there, but I'm not worrying about it too much, right? Keep going. Cover that area. It's still good and wet, right? I know that I have a bit of time. I don't have to panic. I can go and finish this whole area here. You can see how thick or how dry it is. Okay, then I'm just kind of just going sideways here a little bit to blend in a little bit more. And now we better clean up that area a bit. Remember to make it a little bit more regular. Always go in, tip your brush a little bit more to the dark side. Soften that up a little bit so it's a little more fuzzy. Okay, so you see how dark that is? Now I can go and pop a little bit more highlight through it. Okay, so you just don't want to keep going over the same area over and over again. Too much. Right? Soften that. Otherwise it starts to turn into mud. So there comes a point where if you feel a little bit insecure about adding more, just wait for it to dry and then we can add a few more highlights and brighten it up a little bit more with a bit more white. But I don't want to add too much white at this stage. I want to keep this the true citrus. Okay, underneath. You gotta kind of pounce hard and hold your canvas in place sometimes. Careful around these corners here where it gets a little tight. Turn it upside down. Oh yeah. The more you can clean this up, the easier it'll be to get the yellow to pop up nice and clean. So I'll show you a little trick that we can, I'll just leave that little dirty area there, and I'm going to show you a little trick to clean that up there when we start doing it. Basically, it's just putting white down and making sure that you've got it white out again, letting it dry, and then the yellow will be a lot more cleaner and brighter. So if you feel more comfortable and it's closer to you, just flip it upside down. Okay. And then that way it's a little bit more, I can get my shoulder in there and I can work right over my area. So just remember that when you're automatically going back and forth to your plate, it's going to be upside down now. So my one thing that I try to do is I turn my plate upside down, so then that way I can just keep grabbing a bit at a time there and not having to worry about, oh, which way does my brush go? But just remember to turn it back around again if you start working the other way around. Okay. And now I flip my brush around and I'm just wet on wet, so I'm trying to kind of blend that top area in a little bit more. Okay. A lot of this you won't see, but any little peaks of it pop out. We'll have the main look of the, so I'm just kind of scattering some dark back in there too a little bit. Now if it gets too light, I know these back areas are a little bit drier, right? So I'm just trying to soften around the edge. And this up just a little bit more here. Just keep playing back and forth, let it dry. A little too much water, squeegee it out. Dry it a little bit if it's too wet. Okay, so I'm going to let that area dry. And like I said, there's a good chance that a lot of that won't show. This area is dry. Just focus on one area at a time while the other area dries. Okay, so I think I'm liking that. So like I said, we're most likely we're going to stick a leaf or something behind there that's not going to show that part. So just to get the color in there. Alright, so if anything is really wet around your back sides, I would try and get the blow dryer out and give it a little bit of a dry before you start doing your base coat, just in case you run into wet green, because it will smear your color. Okay. But if you are dry, and you want to clean it up a little bit, just take a small little number 8 or a 10 and clean. And just grab a little tiny bit of white and just clean up that area. And so we're going to paint over it anyways, but if you want to just make sure that it's nice and clean. Always use a little bit of white. A bit neater. Cover this up too because that dark gray might leave a shadow. That's just from the frame. And so I was just giving it a slight base coat in certain areas. I'm just using basically the corner of my brush. Clean up that dirty gray or dirty green. It's just for getting fussy and making sure things get nice and sharp. Clean up the bottom of this foot a little bit. And there. Okay, so we're just going to fool around with our ribbon first on paper so that you feel comfortable. And I'm going to play around with the magenta. See how we like that idea. So again, we just double load our brush, and you definitely want that 3/4 gradient. You can have a dirty pink here a little bit, so then that way when we go to top up a little bit of white, it's going to have that light pink and dark pink and the white highlight. I don't usually, I'm actually dirtying my pink on purpose here. Move my gradient down so that I'm picking up mostly dark. So basically our ribbons are sometimes the hardest part. So you know, you can do a little easy little button. And then what you're going to do is start off at the top and push and pull, slide it a little bit, push and pull. I did that with the highlight on the inside. Could be putting that highlight on the outside. Just kind of doing little S motions. Paper's very dry. for the ribbon. So you can see this is a half and half gradient. Okay, so I really want to push that down and move it over so you're seeing a lot more pink. Play around like that. Then to get your highlight in there on your second coat, go over it again where I sometimes pop in my little bit extra white. Nice and blended. And then the other side of it, okay, thing. Move your canvas around a little bit to get that flip going on. This is a longer slide, so up on your chisel. Bit of an easy one. You can do them a little bit more on the side. And you're really going on the chisel and coming around. It's very similar to some of the leaves that we were doing. Going from top to bottom, as opposed to going curly leaf. And you want the highlight on the outside. Flip your brush upside down. Push, pull up, push, pull up. So you see that makes it a little bit more skinnier, right? Than as opposed to going sideways. That's what most people do, is they're not going on that angle enough. Okay. You really want to flip things around. Flip your brush around, and that'll give it another little curl. In this project, we don't have a lot of room. Show you that again. Down, back and forth. That gives you a little bit more of a ribbon effect as well. So just practice, play around. This one is just moving it up and down, where this one is actually flipping it over, popping up on your chisel, flipping it over, popping up, and back over. See how when you do such a dry stroke, definitely need a little bit more floating aid. And then the top of our bows, starting off skinny, coming out fat, around in a circle, and then just sliding your brush sideways into center. On this side, slide skinny, slowly fatter, coming around in a circle, and then slide sideways so you're coming in. Of course, once you get the hang of it, you know, you can Make them a little bit more fancy. A little bumpy stroke. And you're going to come in and do your second one. And you can make them a little bit more fancier. A little extra ribbon. And then use put a little C curve right in there. Little knot. If you do want to make them a little bit more fancy, flip your brush around. You're almost doing like a little highlight in there. That's another way. Make it a little bit longer. Oops. Your white is in the inside. And the inside. That's a pretty big one there. Following around. That's one way of doing it. Oops. Just don't get yourself all messed up like I'm doing here. Highlight in the middle. And I've also done it this way. Little knot like that. I've seen it done a couple different ways. I did one for my teddy bear as well. Bow tie. You can see another variation there of an actual bow. That's what we're going to play with our little ribbon. I'm going to water this down just a slight bit. It's a little bit thick. I want it to be a little bit inky. Just a little spot on the side. Rest. Out my brush. And then also I want to make some white a little bit inky. And then clean off your brush. So what you're going to do is swipe through your blue and then swipe through your white. You want to make sure you have enough blue on the one side. Just to fool around a little bit on our paper here. You're basically doing the same thing. You're pushing down, making it a little bit wider, using the tip of your brush. Try to pick up the same side, A little bit pressure, curl. And when you're making the smaller ones, then you can definitely layer them a little bit more. And then again, you're doing the same thing. You're pushing, pulling, pushing. Always help it a little bit. Picking up a little bit more weight, wet on wet. Yeah. Make your little circle and a variety of ways of giving them. That looks like a little bit of a knot. You can always just do a bunch of these little movements too. Make your little knot. White to them. You have a little highlight to them. Just a little bit of a play. Like I said, we have lots and lots and lots of liner practice to teach you a lot more, and these ribbons are also on number 3. Alrighty, for our flower practice, I just want to remind you a little bit about these flowers. And some of them are a little bit more shells, some of them are more like a teardrop, but this is a very loose style of flower. So whatever you feel comfortable with, or maybe you prefer the look of one or another. But like I said, it was the ability to paint in all the directions that really helped to bump out the style of the petal and give it some flair to it. If you decide that you are still not ready yet to do that, then yes, please, keep whatever's easier for you, keep practicing. And this is why we have another little area here for you for a little extra practice, just to go over these strokes again, and I can get a little closer just on plain paper with no background. Okay, so we have some paper ready. And I just want to remind you too that sometimes I do go through some of these practices even a little quick. So this is from the course number 2 that's already available. Okay, I take you down baby steps, right, with your gradients into the teardrop, and helping you with the practicing of all your directions of being able to push yourself to paint upside down. And then also I have some extra practices here for you and the videos to go along with them that show you how to layer flowers. So we're going to do subtle layering today, but for the hydrangeas and the lilacs and different types of flowers like that, definitely, they are a little bit more tighter layering. And then also I have the practices here with the smaller brushes for you to do these kind of flowers. So if you want to make them big, you want to make them tiny, it's going to be depending on the size of brush that you use. And then also I do show you a very loose style, bumpy type style. I don't want to call it a shell, and I don't want to call it a teardrop. Alright, so there's some also a little bit more pointy ones too. Okay, so this is all in course number 2. So if you haven't jumped on it yet and you're having a little bit difficulties with this project, then please feel free to jump on the intro courses 1 to 5, okay, because course number 2 is going to have the basic tier, and then course number 5 is going to really bump you into these shell stroke type flower petals. All right, so I've got a few different brushes here. I've got a size 16, 12, 10, 8, and a 6. So I really do highly suggest that you practice with all of the brush sizes so that you're able to make a variety of canvases, and it'll get you ready for future projects. I am going to do a quick demo with all of these brushes for you to show you how to do all these flowers in all the sizes of brushes, and plus our little starter ones, little sprigs that we have on the side, are basically the daisy strokes that we were doing already, but just in different colors. So we're basically doing the same thing with our little sprigs off to the side, okay? And then, you know, you're just changing the color and this different size of brush, because we use the 3/4 for the background one, and we're going to use a 10 or a 12, depending on how big you want to make your canvas. So that makes it look a little bit more pudgier and a little bit different on top of the really skinny ones on the back. Okay, for these flowers, you're going to need a magenta and a cobalt. And of course, white. Fell off. I heard you could make a bracelet with all those little things. Donna got one as a gift. It sounds like a fun idea. Just start keeping them. See what you can come up with. And of course, a little bit of floating medium, because we are going to be showing you on the cardstock. So let's start off with our biggest brush. And this is a blend that I'm making with, let's find a plate is a little bit dry, so it's bumpy right there. So I'm going to move over a little bit. And then I'm going to start adding my magenta. And you know that those two colors will make a beautiful purple. Okay, but we really want a pinky color. So you're going to just keep adding pink and adding pink until you get your nice purpley pink. Okay, if you're getting too much paint and it's getting pinky enough for you, wipe out your brush and then move your gradient up just a slight bit. Okay. So you notice that I haven't added any white yet. Okay, so if you need a little bit more of that bluey purple, then you can always move down in your gradient a little bit. So now I'm going to start picking up my white and adding it into my blend. Okay, so hopefully you can see the blending of the colors a little bit better with me doing it one at a time. You know, or a dirty white. What I want is a dirty white. Okay, so in this case, we're gonna, you know, dirty it on purpose. And as you keep painting and painting and painting, yes, it gets this way, but in the beginning strokes, sometimes they're just too bright. Okay, so we're going to put lots of paint here to get us going, and that way we don't have to go back and pick up more paint all the time. Okay, so it's getting pushed over, and you keep focusing on that center. Okay, so if you need more paint, then you can always come over and squeegee it off the side, add it into your gradient. Or maybe you will need a little bit more light. You can always squeegee it off the top and add it in here. So then when you keep adding to your design, you're getting the same color combination. And then every once in a while, you can just keep adding a little bit more pink or a little bit more blue. And when you're doing a variety of flowers like that, it's nice to have those variations of colors popping up through, especially when you're doing a lot of variety of them. So this is what I'm encouraging you to do for these flowers. So this is your basic tear stroke. Pink. Even if it's a little bit more purple at this stage, that's okay. Just keep playing around with it during your practice. Okay. So this is your typical shell. And this is your bump. So you're just kind of waving it around, and you can kind of do two, or you can, do more waves. Okay. So they're a little bit more of a looser style and more random. And you'll see me do a variety in the project. Okay. This one's very flat. Always go over it. Okay. This one kind of goes up and over. And it's when I don't even think about it, this is when they turn out the best. Right? You're just kind of and making them a little bit smaller. You don't have to make them too wide. Okay. A little bit more looser, right? And then if you're getting too much of this drag behind, it's because you're not puffing up enough with your chisel. Okay. That's happens a lot to all of us. But if you're wondering why that's happening, okay, but it's not a big deal because you can always add to it and make another one. Okay, so you see this one's getting really dark. I'm really actually loving the almost 80-90% gradient here. But if you want to add just a little bit more pop to it, you just add a little bit more white to the tip of your brush, and then kind of repeat what you did. Make it pop out a little bit more. You see that it looks like I'm highlighting, shadowing. You can see all three colors. You can see my gradient is really nice and high up. There, a little bit of floating medium. Just keep picking up more pink than anything else, and you'll see how it's slowly getting from purple to more mulberry kind of. So we always usually start our flowers with, the illusion of a little man, right? Have our top of his head, and then flicking that in sideways. Okay, so don't worry if it's dry. Go over it again. And a lot of times I'll go over things twice, and the first time I just kind of get it in there. I don't worry about tipping too much on the white. Okay, and then there's this other arm. Okay, so just a little bit of a wiggly wash. Wiggly, bumpy, smoother strokes. Okay. I'm going to come upside down. White at the edge. And then depending if you're right-handed or left-handed, sometimes the closing stroke, you can do it in both directions. Whatever you feel more comfortable. You can slightly move your canvas a little bit to make your life a little bit easier. I'm not saying don't move it at all. Okay. But what I do notice too is that I'm not up on my table enough on my surface, and you got to get those shoulders up, and so that you're able to flick your brush up and under. I mean, there's always an easier way for everybody. A little bit brighter. But then you see what happens. I made that one brighter, so I have to make all of them brighter. Right? So this is where you try to keep your gradient on your plate the same now for all 5 colors to freshen it up. Make some more of that. Flip over my gradient. A little bit more pink. Okay. So you can always darken this again if you really wanted it darker. Just go over it again. And a lot of times I like my background flowers to be a little bit darker. And then if you layered another flower on top of it, you want to make sure that it's brighter than the last one. Just make sure that you're happy with these, because if you have to go over it again, you're going to mess up this way. Okay. Which happens. Okay, if you feel like you need to, make sure that you're happy with the stroke behind, so then that way you can go over it again, fix the one in front. So mostly I'm just trying to come up with some of the things that are common problems for you guys. Okay. And a lot of times I won't even finish the 5 petals if I know I'm going to layer it. Okay. So if I'm going to put another flower right in front of it, why bother, right? But I do want to make sure that I cover this area, right? So if you figure 1 petal in here, should I made a 4th? Maybe I should. So I will come down and add a 4th one in here. And then where you would finish it, you're starting another one. And you're just coming up inside it. And that's how you layer flowers. And then you just keep going. And then a lot of times you have to decide too is where on the sides you want, maybe you can have some leaves, or depending on how wide you want to go with your layering. So a lot of times I'll come down here, okay, and I'll do a couple upside down. And you don't have to make them all like really tight. You can always make them a little bit more like a triangle. Tightens them up a little bit. Bit too pink. And just a bit more of that. And then if you wanted to finish maybe a little bit more, let's finish on this side a little bit more. But you see, when you do a new gradient, what happens? You're not going to be the same color as you were before. So that's the only thing that I would suggest, is that try to make enough blend on your plate that you can complete one flower. Or at least go over it again the second time and focus on being able to be all in the same blend. Okay, so you see that's another common thing that happens to people, because you keep trying to blend on your plate, and you know, pick up, especially when you're picking up two different colors like this to create a blend. Okay, so you're gonna have some variations. So it's okay to have those variations. Just make sure that they're all unified in one single flower. Okay, so now I want to just change it up a little bit. I'm going to come up a little bit more into the side of this flower. And because this is going to be my only one that I have totally finished, I want to make sure that it's really bright. Okay. I'm going to go into sides. And you can have a variation of your gradients too. You know, some can be a little bit more half, and some can be a little bit more, you know, 3/4. This project is very forgiving that way. So, but it's a good opportunity to focus on them and concentrate on what exactly are you trying to do. Okay. You see, that's how I would layer. You guys all have this practice sheet to work right on top of my work, okay? I'm just going to show you a couple. Here's my paper dirty. I'm going to show you a couple with smaller brushes. So right now I'm trying to stay right in the middle of that gradient with a smaller brush. If you have any issues with keeping yourself focused, then I suggest to come over to the side and, you know, you can steal some of this paint and start a new little spot for your smaller brushes. So remember, size 12. Okay. I had a streak going on for my blend, and I've got almost too much floating medium, so just blop off a little bit of your brush if you think it's getting too blobby. And left-handers would probably start with that one. And then your little hand. It's just a very simple center. A little yellow dot. So this one is definitely, there's lots of floating medium I picked up on this one. You can just let it dry. Go over it again if you want. So some people like that little streakiness, okay? Leave it. Alright. So just know that this one was really heavy with a floating medium. And when you see the picture of this, just let it dry. But you don't have to be totally neat. It's like a looseness, okay? Oh, sorry. That was a size 10. Okay. This is the size 12. That was looking a little bit small. Okay, so I'll have these labeled for you guys. And let's try and fix this dirty spot here I have. And I need some more magenta. It's amazing how fast your gradient, if it's too much floating medium, do a couple strokes on the paper, it's amazing how fast it'll dry out. Just wavy, randomness. You see, if you make them bigger on the top and a little smaller on the bottom, it's going to make them look like they're a little bit more tipped. So every brush you can make it really big, right? By more pressure. Okay. So it's really highly suggested that you can practice hardly little pressure. And as soon as I start to press down, I can feel the drag and I'm not able to push. So I add a little bit more floating medium. Okay, so he's looking kind of unproportioned there now. So just go over and make this one a little bit bigger. And I'm still keeping my top one a little bit smaller. Right, so I'm just trying to show you illusions of size proportion now. Okay, so you see how it all of a sudden is tipping up the other way now? So again, when you change the size, you gotta make sure that you get good coverage so that you hide that stroke underneath. And I can make this slightly bigger now. So it's all about pressure. So just remember that you can make it smaller or bigger. If I can get another sample here. Okay, so this is a small 12. Okay. It's all about pressure. Oops. Got into my white pile. Over it a little bigger. Sometimes I say that I'm going to change to a different size brush and I don't. It's maybe because it's just because I know I can really push a little bit lighter. Okay. And make them as small as I want, or as small as I can physically. Okay. It's okay to have a little space because that could be another opportunity to put another little flower or add a leaf. Okay. And you can always just pick the one that's the smallest and make that one a little bit bigger. Oh, I just want you guys to see that I did not move my paper. Everything is done. So that was the number 12. Okay. And then now this is a number 8. Add a little bit more magenta. I love playing around with the blue and the magenta. You can always use an ink spot if you want a little bit darker, or if you have the dioxin, Parisian blue, sorry. The dioxin purple is beautiful too. So yeah, you can always make them whatever colors you want, okay? So let's try to fix this spot here. And that's what I encourage you to do with your designs. If there's anything that you don't like, stick a leaf on top of it. Okay. And this is kind of average, so I'm putting a little bit average pressure there. You know, I know I can push it more, and I know I can push it less, right? So now that you've got a little taste of, you know, brush size and pressure, for this one, I'm saying that it's probably like average, medium, right? Nice size. And sometimes I have a little bit of a spot, I'll just color it in. Oh, you can also see the different color variations going on with the two colors. So this is your ideal one here. This is like a pink with just a little hint of the purple. This is definitely too purple. But hey, I love purple. Who am I to say it's too much purple? Right? So you make them however you guys want. If you want to do just blue, cobalt, and then just a subtle bit of pink in there, it's going to be, you know, definitely on the purple, more purple side. Alright, so our last little one is a 6. And yes, you can even do this with a 2. Really want to on tiny things. I have a tiny painting course now available to help you guide you down to getting those strokes down to a tiny little version. And I show you how I do my blending different when I do my little tiny 6s. 2 blue, wipe out my brush, pick up some more magenta, pick up, make a new pile. And it's not bad because then you can always wait for it to dry a little bit and then you can always go back. If you need a little bit of blue, you know, then I can always go steal some from over here. Right? This is how my wacky brain works sometimes. And I hope that it makes sense to you. But of course, if you have any questions at all, you can always send me some pictures of your practice. And I can probably tell you what's going on by the way it looks. And just from experience of my own. And again, here's your little 6. A lot of times when I'm doing a tiny little painting, I do depend on tipping my brush a lot more with the white. Okay, so you have your dirty pink over here. And I depend on a tiny little bit of paint extra when you're going this small. Okay. Of determination, and you will be able to do it too. Okay, so then a tiny little color. You see how I'm always using a bit of a pivot point right on my hand. I always like to have something to lean on, or if I need to be brought up more, I'll just tip right up on the top of my pinky, or sometimes I'll just be on my knuckle. Go over it and work it slow. Get it in there tucked. They're doing little chisel ones. You're just doing tiny little daisy strokes and pick up a little tiny bit of white every time and they'll be brighter. And then, well, you see I'm running out of pink. Work that in. And you can always go up and brighten it up again. And then you can slowly work into a smaller flower in the background. Do a couple really small. And then try to go a little bit bigger. How big can I make my little tiny 6? Make sure you're happy with that one. For you. Keep going. And then you can decide, you know, how far you want to make your design. Start finishing a couple of them. Layer a couple over each other. Feel dirty pink going on now. Brighten that up a little bit. It's too dirty. You just gotta stay control of your. Finish this one. You know it's a different color. So I gotta go back if I want this to be part of this flower. Keep layering, keep playing, and every once in a while finish one, right? I always usually work my way out from the outside and then finish somewhere in the middle. But we're really not doing like hydrangea kind of flowers. We're doing a little bit more of a sporadic look in this design. If you want to do more hydrangea and lilac type flower, there's lots more practice in course number 2 for those kind of things. So I'm just trying to give you a little bit of layering and some different examples here. So I did it with a big brush and I did it with a tiny little brush so that you guys can see that you can easily make it in different variations. Okay, and I'll have this all labeled for you. When you're looking at it, you'll be seeing it already labeled, because I like making some of these practice sheets right in front of you, and then when you get the printout, you're actually seeing, you know, any areas that I keep on purpose. But I'm really encouraging you guys to try and practice on your perfection of your strokes and also your gradients and the coverage, opacity of your blends. There's so many things to do that you can play with. It's really endless. So I hope you like this little practice that I've given you guys with the project. And happy painting, and I can't wait to see all your versions on the group and share with your friends.